Hey everyone, it's Matt here with Nightrun Studio, and in the last little while on this channel we've been adding a player progression system where we can use attributes to affect player stats. We're just about ready to start hooking that up to actual in-game values so that our stats change things like our damage and health and max health. That said, without any visual indicators, it's hard to tell that the stats are actually doing anything. So in our last video, we added health pop-ups, and this time around, we're just going to create a health UI bar to accurately display our health and max health each time we change them via our stats. That's where we're headed in this video. Let's get started. So we'll just get started by building the actual UI itself. So let's right-click over in our hierarchy, go to UI, and add a canvas. I'm going to call this one Health HUD. And then right on top of that canvas, we're going to add a UI image. I'll call this one box, as it's going to hold a heart icon as well as our slider. Now if we double click that box, we can kind of zoom out to see where it is, and I'm just going to suck it up into the top corner here and also change its image. I'm continuing to use Edahoshi's minimal GUI for our HUD elements here. You can find a link in the description. And for this one, we'll use the health bar panel. I'm going to give it some values for width and height. Let's go with 400 by 80. And then we can right click on our box and add another element. I'm actually just going to put an empty here. This is going to be for our slider. We can name it slider. That said, I don't like the built-in UI slider that comes with Unity and like to construct my own. We can add a slider component here. And then I'm just going to expand this object in all directions so it takes up the same space as our box. I'll create a large margin here on the left. This is where that heart icon is going to go. I'll also give just a little margin around the other outside so that it's not overlapping this bar but sits inside it. Next, we want to create the actual fill that's going to go inside here. So I'll create a UI image. We'll name it fill, and I'm going to give it the value red sprite. This time around, we're just going to fill it vertically so that it always matches on the top and bottom, but we want to be able to expand it on the sides. Now, if I click on the slider right now and head on down, we can drag our fill into the fill rect here. And then if we change our value, you can see that it's kind of working. It's just overlapping a little too far on both left and right sides. If we go to the fill, it's just kind of added its own negative values here. Let's make sure to zero those out nicely so that it perfectly fills the space. And now going to our slider and changing the value will work perfectly. Next, we'll add a little more visual appeal by putting this slider inside of a second bar. I'm just going to add another UI image here, which I'll call bar, and I'm going to use the value bar graphic. I can then expand it in all directions, and already that looks pretty good, but I want it to fit this space just a little nicer. So if we go up to the slider, we can just sort of expand it by playing with our margins so that it fits really nicely within the outline of the box. You can kind of tweak your numbers to get it just right. I'm going to go with roughly 12 and 18 along the sides here. All right, that's filling that space pretty nicely. And with that done, we can go ahead and just add some text here to display the exact amount of our health. I'll add some Text Mesh Pro. I'm going to expand this one so that it fills the entire space for now. I'll just put in some dummy values so we can see what this looks like if we had max health and current health values. I'm then going to pick the Bangers font, switch mine so that it's using the outline version. I'll then just center this thing in here. You can make yours a little smaller if you don't want it overlapping. I think a 34 will work just fine for me. All right, with that done, we've got our slider set up, and I just want to now add the heart icon for a little more visual flair. To do this, we can right-click on the box, go down to UI, and add yet another image. I'm just going to set this one so that it anchors itself and it sets its position to be all the way to the left. I actually like the 100 by 100 size, so we can leave that there. At this point, I'm going to add the black big circle with border. And then I'm just going to right-click on that image, add yet another image. We can call this one heart icon, and if I type in heart icon, I can find the heart here. I'll expand this one in all directions, and then just give it a bit of a margin. Let's go with, say, 10 so that it fits a little better inside of that. All right, with that done, we've got a pretty slick looking UI HUD here for our health, and it's time that we actually hook this up in code. Now, if you've been following along in our series, you should have a health script that looks something like this. That said, if you haven't been following along, you probably have something similar with a take damage or change health method that just updates your health. That's really all you're gonna need for this one. Now, normally we would actually just toss the slider right in here. That said, this introduces two problems that I want to avoid. First of all, it means that this health bar is tightly coupled to our UI. So for example, if we want to use it for enemies, then we always have to bypass the UI if the enemies don't have it, which just creates a messy script. Also, I want to maintain a better practice of separating concerns. Here we're going to have the nuts and bolts of the health in the health script, and we're going to write a separate health UI script to handle the visuals. So back in Unity, let's create a new mono behavior script, and we can call this one health UI. We can begin by getting rid of our update and start methods, and then we're going to want to create a public slider reference to that slider. For this to work, we will need to add the namespace unityengine.ui. And while we're here, let's go ahead and add the using tmpro namespace as well, since our next variable is going to be a public tmp text, which is going to be the health text. Now at this point, for our health UI to listen to health, it is going to need a reference to it, so we'll introduce a public health reference called health. Now the beauty of this is that while our health UI script will depend on health, the health script itself doesn't know anything about health UI, and so it can exist entirely on its own whether there's a UI or not. Next, we're going to make our only method here, which is going to be a private method to update the UI, and it will just take in two values, an integer for our current health and another integer for our max. Now each time this is called, we'll tell our slider to update its max value to be equal to max, and we'll also have the slider update its value to be equal to our current value. The last thing we're going to need to do here then is just update our text, so we'll have our health text's text equal to, and here we're just going to use a slightly different form than I usually do with concatenation. We're actually going to put a $sign and quotation marks. This allows us to just type without having to add new quotation marks all the time. It also allows us to use this curly brace notation where we can put variables directly in. So we can have our current value, then the slash, and our max value. All right, you'll notice here that our update UI is gray, meaning it's never actually being called. And so the last thing we're going to need to do is make it so that this actually happens whenever our health changes. So in our onEnable method, so as soon as this script gets turned on in the scene, we're gonna have it talk to health, and we'll have it subscribe to an onHealthChanged event. So anytime that event gets called, we're just gonna call our update UI method. Notice here that there's no brackets on this call. Now we've got our subscription, but we also need to unsubscribe so that if an object gets destroyed or something like that, we aren't continuing to try to listen to something that doesn't exist. So we'll just copy this, change it to onDisable, and make sure now that we are removing the subscription. All right, now it doesn't like this. That's just because we haven't created this event yet. So let's pop over to health and do that right away. We've already got a couple of event actions here for when we take damage or die. So let's just come up on top of that and add one more. This time our action is going to take in two integers for our current and max health, and we'll call it onHealthChanged. From here it's pretty straightforward. We'll just come down into our change health method, and right after we actually update our health, we'll just call onHealthChanged. I will put a question mark here. That way if there's no listeners, we don't get errors popping up. And then we can invoke this, passing along our health and max health values. Now that will update our health anytime our health changes. That said, we also want to just make sure that at the beginning of the game, when our health is first initialized, we also do this. So let's copy that event call and just put it in our start method as well. Back in Unity now, we just want to make sure to head to our health HUD and add that health UI component that we've just created. It's going to want to get a couple of values from us, so let's begin by dragging our slider into that slider box. We can make sure that our health text goes into the health text, and then it wants to know where our health script is. Fortunately, this always exists in the same scene as our player with our bootstrap here. That said, our player doesn't actually have the health script, it's on his sprite, which is where we've put all of our core components. So we'll just click on the health HUD and drag that sprite right in there. All right, with that done, I'm just going to head to one of my rooms and we'll give this a shot. Now when I get in the game, you'll notice that my health updated to 20 out of 20 right away, and each time I take damage, it is in fact going down. I can engage in a little bit of combat here, and if I get away, grab this healing magic here and use it, you'll notice that my health is also going up. All right, that's working really nicely. Now between our pop-up damage, healing, and our health UI, we're really well set up so that in our next video we can hook all of our stats up to gameplay values and actually get some visual representation of how our stat changes change our gameplay. Hope to see you in that video. Till then, this is Matt with Nightrun Studio. Cheers.